So Michael actually is a MAEBB, so Master in Advanced Ecological Buildings and Biocity alumni. He did the program in 2018-19, and he's actually now co-directing the program together with Vicente Guayar. So Michael has, in the meantime, gone to other places and come back, and I guess he'll share a bit of stuff about what was going on with that. So on the origin of buildings, or the promotion of favored value change in the struggle in the struggle for life. So Michael's work is a testament to the potential of sustainable technologies to address the current challenges in the built environment and pave the way to a better future. So please help me welcome Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry for jumping the gun. Hello, everybody. Very happy to be here. As Matilda said, my name is Michael Salka. Happy to be co-director and technical director of Valldaura Labs. My alter ego, depending on which side of the pond you're on, is a Gates-Cambridge PhD scholar at the University of Cambridge. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to talk mostly about Valldaura projects because they're more visual. I'm used to doing a lot of online presentations, so my photos here, which seems silly when I'm standing here as well, but glad to be with you in person. So, at the University of Cambridge, I'm a member of Darwin College, and my title for this talk, as well as my thesis there, is inspired in part by this idea on the origin of species and natural selection. Really trying to explore the theory that, like species, the most successful structures are not necessarily the largest or the most complex or resource intensive, but those which best respond to the populations, parameters of their particular environments. And again, I really can't talk much about my career over the past 4 years without talking about Valldaura, because it has been the cornerstone of what I've been doing. And I won't say too much about the facilities. If you come visit tomorrow for the paella, be glad to show you around. In the meanwhile, suffice to say that we have a digital fabrication lab as well as a carpentry lab. And what that enables us to do is to consider the forest itself and the surrounding valleys within the lab. The extents do not end at the boundary of the walls, but these metabolisms, the wood that we harvest, becomes what substantiates our projects. So we work closely with ecologists to select the individual trees that we know will actually improve the overall health of the forest, their removal, because they're fast-growing pioneer species, and we need to create space for the slower-growing species to arise in their stead. And we document these individuals in every way possible before we harvest them, using manual measures as well as all kinds of digital measures to understand them on a quantitative as well as just an aesthetic level. We then perform the entire value chain on site, from milling our own timber to creating these engineered timber products, manifesting at the micro scale what we're projecting for the Catalan region and hopefully further abroad as well. Meanwhile, also developing tools for architects so that we can make decisions based on factors like embodied carbon as it relates to the material choices and their geographic provenance, but without having to do complex LCA analysis, so that this can actually become an iterative feedback to your designs. So these kind of interactive Sankey diagrams that are correlated with the volume calculated from the model, again, to help architects make these decisions in real time as their designs develop. And then telling these stories of where materials come from, also through the buildings themselves. So this is a collaboration that we did with the Mobile World Capital, and the idea is that this augmented reality app empowers visitors to scan a QR code simply embedded in the material of the structure, see exactly where the tree that created that wall or object came from, and in theory even return to that place in the forest and make sure that in fact we made the right decision about which tree to remove and the ecosystem is indeed healthier for it. So running through all of these processes, we've had a number of successful projects through the master's program that we hosted at Valldaura in the past. The first was the new house. This was my year of 2018-19. Built using entirely local pine and timber, nice cozy interior, some recognition through the Design That Educates Awards, proved a nice catalyst for the program in the future years. The next year, we then built the quarantine cabin, which you can see is just hiding here in the background as it's meant to. This was designed and constructed during the Catalan coronavirus lockdown. So it was meant to be a place that does kind of provide refuge and is a bit imposing from the outside, with a facade made from charring the offcuts of the timber that we used to build the structure, providing all of its own energy, as well as a bit of a garden here on the rooftop to provide an activity for inhabitants and replace some of that displaced vegetation. But with an interior that provides a nice spot. If you had to spend a couple weeks in quarantine, you could enjoy the views and live relatively comfortably. We also had some recognition here from the New York Times, which was nice to show that this was having a resonance beyond just the design field, but breaking into popular media to some extent. Having built a couple of houses for people, we then decided that we should build some houses for plants or other organisms. So we built the solar greenhouse, which we use to propagate all of the seedlings that then get transferred into our orchards and gardens. It's probably the most day-to-day used prototype on our campus now, with this diffuse array of solar cells embedded in the glass, providing all of the energy needed for the irrigation system and the lights that keep our plants running on a 24-hour cycle. A bit of recognition here from the Monocle Smartest Student Project as well. Kudos to anybody. I see a couple participants here in the crowd. Well done. And most recently, Flora, a observation pavilion for the canopy biology within the Valldaura forest, just here behind us. This was a partnership with the biologist Meg Lohman, who pioneered this idea of canopy biology, or the specific ecosystem that occupies the higher levels of the trees. So with this glue laminated bridge, we extend from the hillside to bring occupants out into this level of the forest. Sorry, that green's rather dark here. This did not win the first ever Nobel Prize for Architecture. It hasn't won any prizes yet, but I'm confident it's just a matter of time. It's a joke. And while all these projects might seem rather unique or one-off in this kind of exotic environment that is Valldaura, the fact is they're actually designed using prefabrication and modularity with the intent that they could be deployed in all kinds of different scenarios or upscaled to urban scenarios. And some of the ways that we've practiced that so far involve designing larger scale buildings. This is a project by CEO of IAAC, Danny Ibanez, and Vicente Goyart, the other co-director of the program, for a 8-story, 40-unit social housing building that will hopefully be constructed this year in the San Martín area, as well as envisioning how these principles can scale to entire urban systems and entirely different locations, whether Africa or East Asia. Meanwhile, also trying to develop the underlying science that enables these building innovations, working with all kinds of different organizations throughout Europe and further abroad to develop texts like the Transforming Biocities book that will come out next year, published by Springer Nature, and hosting events like the designation of Barcelona as the European Forest City, which we had a great event for back in October of 2022. But as wonderful as all these initiatives at Valldaura are, what I find particularly motivating are the times when we touch the urban sphere or we interact with people who are not necessarily part of the lab, but of the greater public. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing this program, Furnish, which was written as a proposal for the European Institute of Innovation and Technology Urban Mobility Group, bit of a mouthful, I'll call them the EIT for now. Again, during the coronavirus lockdown of 2020, based on the idea that we had this incredible opportunity resulting from all the closure of vehicle lanes, but that there weren't many solutions that address the time scale. Tactical urbanism is wonderful in terms of creating markings and alternative uses for a very short time in urban spaces, and then we have the other end of the spectrum, which is entirely resurfacing, installing new infrastructure, but requires a lot of permitting and investment. So we wanted to tackle this kind of mid-scale, the few months maybe, which we thought were an ideal fit for modular prefabrication using digital tools and natural materials. So this program, Furnish, Fast Urban Responses for New Inclusive Spaces and Habitats, first started with an open call to 7 teams. I'm going to sacrifice a bit of my time here to play some videos because I think they show better the dynamic nature of these programs. So this began with an open call, sourcing 7 teams from different institutes in different cities throughout the EU to develop with local stakeholders these rapidly implementable projects using digital fabrication to either make public spaces safer or give them some kind of new use during COVID that allowed people to communicate, engage without putting themselves at risk of contagion. So altogether, we had 3 teams in Barcelona out of 7, because when you write the project, you get that kind of permission, I suppose. We also had a team from Espoo, Finland, a team from Budapest, a team from Guimarães in Portugal, and a team from Milan. Simultaneously deploying these installations, working with different groups, whether they were young students or local community organizers, and creating a community as well of the design and fabrication. So from IAAC, we kind of coached each team through their design and building processes to make sure that they were achieving the really accelerated time scale, using appropriate materials and using appropriate fabrication technologies. So in Budapest, they renovated these courtyards, created public space. In Espoo, they created these pods that are connected with Arduino electronics, so you can have a conversation between students to discuss your coursework or just have a chat without being in contact. In Milan, they created a very Fab Lab style reconfigurable furniture system that was deployed under a viaduct with a kind of chessboard plugin we'll see now, but they can host other plugins. They had a basketball hoop designed here, some other tables, etc. The UPC developed a sort of educational module that could host academic content. Elisava worked with us to develop this great attachment to the terribly ugly New Jersey barriers that were used to close off the corners of the blocks in the Champlain and turn them into both an outdoor classroom as well as a play space that students really enjoyed. And at IAAC, we developed these terrace platforms for all of the newly opened outdoor seating associated with restaurants in the Champlain that again were closed off with these atrocious concrete barriers, which were really kind of an insult to the amazing urban design in Barcelona. We replaced them with a nice aesthetic, regionally sourced wooden platform. This Furnish initiative then kind of developed a momentum and life of its own, which led to a commission from the City Council of Barcelona to refine this concept for a quickly deployable natural material platform for outdoor dining. A few of these have popped up in the Champlain now. Hopefully we'll see more come through. Also integrating some plantings here and a little parametric flare. We then won another grant and did a second round of this project, both with Elisava and IAAC, implementing a rammed earth play structure for kids with the Anthony Brooks School, kind of blending the soft sand with these rammed earth platforms, integrating co-design processes so the students informed the layout of these structures. And then IAAC worked with Escola Intensa to develop this series of installations from trunks that were sourced from our local forest and have, again, these QR codes that allow the youngsters to see where the materials came from and learn those stories. These other elements that gave a kind of seating or play area made from scrap material and this sort of cloud that marks the entrance to the school, giving it a bit of identity. Yet another addition, this was just last year in 2022, again working with local schools, Elisava developed these mobile tables that students could tag to their heart's content, and we developed using waste timber again from the Valldaura Labs facility, this kind of outdoor bench that the students appropriated for a dance space, and they named the caracol because it has this sort of snail shape. I'm going to play now one more video because the images I don't think do justice to how participatory these projects are and how they really become opportunities for celebration from the communities. So this is from the Escola Intensa project. Again, kudos to the students who were directly involved here.
So energetic because of the kids around.
And it's a bit more fun with sound, but at least you can get the idea that the students, and I mean the young students in this case, elementary schoolers, are really getting their hands dirty with all of the tools, engaging in this process, so learning about the capacities of natural materials, locally sourced materials, as well as developing their confidence in creating structures. And also taking the opportunity to create a bit of a street party and really a celebration of this event. It sounds more like a party with the audio track, but we'll go just a little bit further until the climax moment when the cloud gets deployed into place.
It's the moment of truth. Yeah. And it seems strong, so that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the moment of truth where this modular cloud that we've been relying on elementary school kids to tie together, checked by our own staff, of course, and students, has to be lifted off the ground and then deployed above the entryway. So whether or not it holds together is to be determined. Voila, there's applause in the background, trust me. Most recently, across the channel in England, with my PhD, I'm leveraging these same kind of understandings of natural materials and how their value chains can engage people and respond appropriately to environments, but not being so dogmatic about timber. We really rely on timber here because of the local availability of the forests, and we see it as a very scalable and easy to integrate into automated value chains option. But there's plenty to be said for earth, mycelium, bamboo, all kinds of other natural materials that maybe have a more resonant relationship to local traditions or local climates. So my work at Cambridge is investigating all kinds of different natural material systems. My first period of field work was in the southwest US, the area that I hail from, studying a lot of earth architecture, looking first at things like Taos Pueblo that have been around for 1,000 years using Adobe, but also the way that these same technologies are being reinterpreted for industrial production here in the upper left, or this is now the largest Adobe construction ongoing in the world, this labyrinth here in the middle, an incredible mosque by Hassan Fatih and his team, different Earthship self-sustainable buildings here using a rammed earth technology, and then in the bottom right, also some 3D printed earth. So understanding, again, how this material evolves over time and how different approaches to the value chain have different impacts on the people involved. The idea being, and as most PhDs, mine has been an awful lot of writing and reading thus far, so I'll show you just some schematics, and in a couple of years, I'll show you more interesting visuals. But having done this trip to map all these earth value chains, that will be complemented by a trip to Norway to study engineered timber value chains, and eventually a trip to Indonesia to study bamboo value chains, leading to a library of these natural material networks, which will then be algorithmically mapped using GIS systems in order to project what material systems might make sense in any given location using a network analysis. So thanks a lot for your time. If you have any other questions and you want to look into the furnish.tech program, please do. Otherwise, valldaura.net, and I hope to see you for the PIA tomorrow.